Following a rocky start to patch 3.24, players across Star Citizen have in many cases been unable to complete hauling contracts, the newest gameplay edition, which has left many frustrated. But what does that gameplay actually look like when everything works as intended? I'm Forrester, and this gameplay video covers a trip out in the Freelancer, chaining together 3 hauling contracts. Some of the quantum drive trips have been sped up to keep the overall length of the video down, and those parts are clearly marked as such, but otherwise this is a real-time view of cargo hauling. And this is intended to be a gameplay video rather than a guide, although there is a cargo tutorial available on the channel if that's what you were hoping for. But without further ado, let's get started. And the first thing to think about is contract selection. It does seem that at the moment avoiding the space stations above cities, so like Port Tressler, Everest Harbour, seems to be a way to avoid issues. At the time of recording this video, I didn't know that, so I just got very lucky. Instead, what I was looking for would be a series of contracts that I could stack up on my Freelancer that all took me to the same place and either had 1 or 2 points at which they started. So I'm just looking for contracts that will take me to the same area. I also need to check by reading the contract that firstly I have enough storage available on the Freelancer to make it in a single hop, and secondly that none of the individual crates are too large. In this case, this sort of thing that takes me to Port Tressler, although it starts at MISC L1, seems like it might be a good choice. But I'm checking through the rest of the list to see if there's anything else in there that also starts and ends in the same place. It does seem a feature of the new cargo hauling contracts that this list is absolutely full to the brim with options. I wish I had this for salvage sometimes. So there's another one, MISC L1 to Tressler. So I'll grab that. And there was one more that was MISC L1 to Tressler. There it is. So I'll accept that one. So I've got 3 contracts. They all end up at Port Tressler, but I don't have any cargo loading at Port Tressler, which is I think where I got lucky with this. And one of them starts here in New Babbage, and the other 2 start at MISC L1. So first things first, I need to load up the New Babbage cargo. And to assist in that process, I'm actually just going to move the ship. So this is the Freelancer. It's one of the oldest cargo type ships in the game. I was really keen to take it out because it's also quite cheaply rentable. So I wanted to showcase that if you are new to cargo hauling and maybe you don't have a cargo ship but wanted to try it, the Freelancer would be a great choice for a cheap rental to be able to give it a go and see what the gameplay feels like. I have a slight issue here. Again, this is me just recording things as they are, where the USB devices on the computer suddenly reset. So where you see the lag spikes and then the random uncontrolled drifting of the ship, that was the USB devices all deciding to beep boop boop boop, and I can't explain why that happened, but it did just after I took off. Go figure. So at this point I've backed up the Freelancer fairly close to the freight elevator. Probably could have got closer, but I'm still learning. And then access the freight elevator to bring on the cargo. So first things first, send it down to the warehouse. And then transfer all of the cargo across. Because it's New Babbage, I have all of my other stuff here as well, so I'm ignoring that, just checking that I've got the contracted materials, which I do. and then make sure that I'm tracking the correct contract, which I am. So at this point my crates are up on the elevator, so I'm going to use my handy multi-tool to load everything aboard the Freelancer. Now some of you might notice I'm just using my mini multi-tool for this rather than the big chunky max lift. That's a personal choice. I can't really explain it, but I prefer using this tiny little multi-tool. I think it's because I spend so long in the Vulture moving boxes with this thing that it just feels very natural. So this is my go-to choice. I don't know if there is an advantage to using the bigger one other than the fact that you can move big boxes, but this to me feels nimble, so that's why I'm using this one. It's personal preference. There's no strategic reason. I don't know anything. I'm just creature of habit, I suppose. So with these hauling contracts, this is one of the neat features of patch 324, is that everything is loaded kind of, or can be loaded manually. It's really fun to do the first few times, or if you're doing small haul contracts, when you're in and amongst some of the bigger cargo bays. I'm thinking things like the Hercules size of cargo. It gets a little bit more tedious, gets old fast. But for a small ship like the Freelancer, this kind of thing it definitely makes you feel very involved, because I suppose in a smaller ship like the Freelancer, as the pilot and co-pilot, you probably would be doing the loading and unloading much more than you would do in a larger ship where you might be contracting it out. Just checking that I've got enough room on the walkway there. I do. And then we'll grab the last bits. So for those who are a fan of Space Tetris, this new mechanic is going to be very fun. I'll load the next box up. I think that's everything. Yes, it is. So we'll head to our next pickup point, which is going to be MISC L1. So my thought here was, rather than just do one contract of A to B, it makes more sense to be dropping off more things, because a lot of the time spent is still in the travel time, and a lot of the time spent is still in the loading and unloading time. So if I'm unloading once and I'm traveling all to the same place, in my mind I'm thinking, well, I could do 3 contracts in the time it might take to do 2 individual or 1.5 individual. So the idea is to try and save a little bit of time by chaining them together, but also because I've got this cargo bay in the back, which is 60 plus SCUs in the Freelancer. I want to use it. So also I suppose it's kind of that mentality of saying, well, if I was a Freelancer pilot in the verse and I've got all this space in the back, I'm not going to be leaving it empty. I'm going to want to fill it up and make the most of it. So that was the idea behind this one anyway. I also thought it was important to try and keep the footage showing as is. I think this was another slight issue where I had to disconnect and reconnect, so I had to put the throttle fully forward again. But I wanted to show the video without the usual ×12. I have ×12'd on the quantum travel hops, but I wanted to show everything else as is, and the reason for that is I worked quite hard to get a cargo tutorial video out very shortly after the patch. It involved getting up very early in the morning and going to bed very late at night to make sure that I've got all the footage and all the editing done. And one of the frequent comments that I got on that was, oh, this isn't real, or this is done in the PTU, because of the issues that people have been having with cargo hauling. And a couple of the comments said you should show the uncut footage so that we know that it's not fake. So that's what this is. This is the pure footage, some of which appeared on that cargo hauling tutorial video, which hopefully shows that I was just lucky. You know, in hindsight, I was very lucky. And I don't want to appear unsympathetic to those that have had issues with cargo hauling, but I also wanted to show that when it does all work out and it does all go well, it is possible. So here we are, coming up in times 12 speed towards the station, and then we'll ask for our landing bay.
You are clear to launch. Please proceed.
So this is Michael 1. I've got 2 contracts here that involve pickups from this location, and then all 3 contracts then will all drop off at Port Tresla above Microtech. A little overdrift there coming into land. So the Freelancer is one of the oldest cargo ships in the game. It was actually quite nice taking this out, a little bit nostalgic, just taking out one of the older ships to try out one of the newer gameplay loops. It just felt like a nice little nod to the history of the Freelancer. Incidentally, if you're watching this and wondering, oh, should I buy a Freelancer in the game? I love the Freelancer, but if you're going to be doing stuff like this, the Freelancer Max, the big old orange Freelancer Max, is much better value because the cargo bay is so much bigger. So if you are a fan of the Freelancer and you're thinking of a mid-range cargo ship, I would actually be looking at the Freelancer Max rather than the base model. The difference in price isn't huge, but the difference in cargo capacity is. So, back to the freight manager, send the elevator down. And then I'm going to grab everything and move it to the elevator using select all and move to elevator and then move it up. So I have got 2 contracts worth of goods here. So it's going to be a fair amount of loading up to do. But thankfully, they're mostly in a very handy form factor. So we'll take our trusty tractor beam and load her up. I feel like I parked a lot better for this second haul. I'm right up by the elevator. Quite pleased with my parking. Quite pleased with my box stacking as well, for that matter. I know it's going to be quite frustrating deep into the patch, and we're going to want to use all of the automated options available for cargo loading and unloading, but at this point it is still a novelty, and so I quite enjoy the moving around of boxes. There we are. That's everything aboard. Check that that's properly on the grid. Looks good. Quick check of everything else. And then check there's nothing left on the elevator. There isn't. So we'll close the door, squeeze past those boxes, and then move to the cockpit. So the Freelancer actually has 2 kind of cargo bays. It's got that big cargo bay at the back. It also has that room that kind of sits between all the other rooms where there is some cargo storage. I've not actually tried getting anything through the door this batch. It'll be interesting to see how easy or difficult that is, but I feel like there are a few ships like that where the question of how does the cargo load is going to be an interesting one. Come to mind like the Carrack. How is that? Is that easy to do? I don't know, I need to test it out, I suppose. I guess you can let me know in the comments if you're a Carrack driver and have experience loading cargo or unloading cargo from the ship. So here we go. Steady out. And now I've got all 3 contracts worth of stuff on the back.
Thank you.
And so we hop over to Port Tressler, unload for the 3 first hauling contracts. And times 12 speed for the jump, because goodness knows if you play Star Citizen, you've probably seen quantum travel more than enough for a lifetime already. And then arriving at Port Tressler, and we'll ask for a landing bay. So I do just want to point out once again, you know, I don't want this video to come off as unsympathetic. I do understand that a lot of people have had a lot of issues with cargo hauling, but I also wanted to point out that, you know, that took me by surprise initially last week because it was working for me. And if all you experience is a system that seems to be working, you kind of just assume that's the same for everybody. So I'm sorry to hear of all those instances where it hasn't been, but I guess this is a rare flavour of when everything comes together and it just works. I think the only problems I had in this run were my own USB ports rather than the game, which again in hindsight seems very, very fortunate. So once again, steer out to try and align as closely as I can to this cargo freight ramp.
Thank you. Please visit again.
Engines off. And then it should just be a case of unloading everything onto the freight elevator. Once again, using my smaller multi-tool. Try and say like Obi-Wan that it's more civilized or something like that than the big wieldy max lift. I have no evidence for that. I tell you what, this Freelancer's done alright for being one of the older ships in game. It's hauled this cargo like a champ. Now I haven't really got any method to how I'm loading up this freight ramp. I think because it's a very small amount of cargo that I'm unloading compared to the capacity of the ramp, I'm just sticking everything on the base level, no stacking, and just having it as is. And as a reminder, this is 3 of the smaller contracts that we're unloading here. Actually quite satisfying watching this back. I'm still taken in by the loading and unloading mechanics. I'm still taken in by the space Tetris. I'm sure I will get bored of it, but I'm not yet. But then I always liked organising boxes with the Vulture, so I don't know, I guess it probably is a matter of scale. I feel like loading and unloading boxes like this when it's a couple of minutes work isn't so bad. I've done the Hercules a couple of times. I don't really enjoy doing that, so maybe it is a question of scale. But there we are, that's everything. Quick check of the Freelancer. See there's no boxes left. There aren't. So over to the Freight Manager terminal. Everything's on there. Lower the elevator. Transfer into the warehouse. Transfer complete. And there we have it. That should be 3 contracts, all completed. So that was it, my first 3 hauling contracts in game. Quick check of the contracts tab to show 1, 2, 3, all completed. The payout wasn't huge, but they were done. So, if you enjoyed this video, you might press the like button to let me know I should make more similar videos, and if you're not yet subscribed, given that you got this far, you probably want to do that too, so that YouTube will know to show you more videos like this in future. Otherwise, and as always, thank you for watching.